The Griffith Observatory. It sits on a hillside overlooking Los Angeles, just to the right of the Hollywood sign. Some call it the hood ornament of LA. It's a distinctive Art Deco building, built in the early 1930s. You've probably seen it in movies or on TV. Its first major role was in the James Dean film Rebel Without a Cause. They paid homage to that more than 60 years later in La La Land. Charlie's Angels fought Demi Moore here, and it's where Arnold picked up his outfit in The Terminator.
Your clothes. Give them to me, now.
It's made dozens of appearances over the years. But what is the Griffith Observatory? What's the story behind it? Who built it and why? The answer to that starts with a man named Griffith Jenkins Griffith. Yes, his name was Griffith. Not only that, but he preferred to be called Colonel Griffith. Mr. Griffith never served in the military. He was born in South Wales in 1850 and immigrated to the US as a teenager. Griffith made a small fortune in silver mining and by marrying a rich woman. After moving to Los Angeles in 1882, he bought a 4,000-acre piece of land called Rancho Los Feliz. The colonel then sold off about 1,000 acres of the ranch, becoming even richer in the process. In 1896, Griffith donated the remaining 3,015 acres to the city of Los Angeles. He believed that in order to become a great city, LA needed to have a great park, like those he had seen in Europe. When he donated the land, Griffith said, "I consider it an obligation to make Los Angeles a happier, cleaner, and finer city." He went on to say that the park must be made a place of recreation and rest for the masses, a resort for the rank and file, for the plain people. He also wanted to avoid paying taxes on land that was hilly, had little practical use, and was believed to be cursed. Despite his wealth, Griffith was an odd man. By 1903, his marriage had become strained by his constant drinking and paranoia about being targeted by the Pope's assassins. Griffith, his wife Tina, and their son Van vacationed during the summer of 1903 at the Hotel Arcadia in Santa Monica. On September 4th, as they were packing up to go home, Griffith began to interrogate Tina at gunpoint. As usual, the colonel had been drinking heavily. Griffith demanded to know if his wife had ever conspired to poison him or anyone else. He also asked if she had been unfaithful to him. Tina swore before God that she had not done any of these things. Unconvinced, he shot her in the face. Mrs. Griffith jumped out the window to escape, landing on a roof 1 story below. Despite a gunshot to the head and broken shoulder, she crawled to safety. After shooting his wife, the colonel went bar hopping, and the police finally caught up with him 3 days later. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Tina survived and spent a month in the hospital. She had lost one eye and was badly disfigured by the gunshot. After this, Mrs. Griffith had become fed up with her husband's nonsense and filed for a divorce. It was granted. Tina lived in seclusion with her sister's family until her death in 1948. Their son Van eventually became park commissioner and later a police commissioner. Griffith's trial was as sensational as the O.J. Simpson trial would be more than 90 years later. At first, the colonel said the shooting was an accident. By the time of the trial, his defense was insanity induced by alcohol. His lawyers and expert witnesses claimed that he suffered from chronic alcoholic insanity. This strategy paid off for Griffith. He was not convicted of attempted murder. Instead, he was found guilty of assault with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 2 years in prison. The colonel was out on parole in December 1906. While incarcerated, Griffith had become interested in prison reform. After his release, he published a book condemning the horrific conditions in America's prisons. He also pledged to support the temperance movement, which was gaining popularity across the country. But more than anything, the colonel wanted to restore his tarnished reputation. By the early 1900s, Southern California had become a mecca for astronomy. Mount Wilson had one of the biggest telescopes in the world. That observatory was founded in 1904 by George Ellery Hale, and it was used by numerous scientists including Hubble, Shapley, Michelson, and even Einstein. After a visit to the observatory in 1908, Griffith said, "If all mankind could look through that telescope, it would change the world." This led him to begin dreaming about building an observatory for the masses. In 1912, Griffith offered Los Angeles $100,000 to build an observatory on Mount Hollywood. The following year, he offered an additional sum to build an outdoor theater. However, city leaders were reluctant to accept large donations from a disgraced criminal, so they declined his offer. By 1916, with failing health, Griffith realized his dream would not be achieved during his lifetime. But the colonel did not surrender. He drafted a will leaving the majority of his $1.5 million fortune to the city if they built a public observatory and an outdoor theater, as he had envisioned. The colonel died of liver disease in July 1919 at the age of 69. The city finally accepted the money he had left to build both the Griffith Observatory and the Greek Theater. Construction began on the observatory in 1933, and it was completed in 1935. What Griffith J. Griffith did to his wife was brutal and reprehensible. The boastful, scheming, odd little man had numerous character flaws. It's easy to ridicule and poke fun at the colonel more than 100 years after his death. But who among us can claim to be perfect, especially after drinking 2 quarts of whiskey? Despite his flaws, Griffith's generosity and lasting legacy in Los Angeles is undeniable. The initial observatory project alone cost $400,000 and employed an army of scientists, sculptors, masons, engineers, and construction workers at the height of the Great Depression. In the early 2000s, it was completely renovated at the staggering cost of $93 million, yet again pouring money into the local economy. In the 9 decades since it was built, over 85 million people have visited the observatory. Even now, the iconic landmark attracts about 1.5 million visitors every year. The observatory is packed full of displays and activities that will fascinate both old and young alike. The planetarium features state-of-the-art digital projection of the cosmos. The exhibits explore various scientific concepts. The telescope offers public viewing of celestial objects. More people have looked through that telescope than any other telescope in the world. If nothing else, the observatory offers some of the most epic views of Southern California, especially at night or after a winter rainstorm. The Griffith Observatory has become a symbol of Los Angeles and Southern California culture. If you live nearby and it's been a while, you should go back and check it out. If you're traveling to Los Angeles, make sure it's on your list of places to visit, and tell them the Colonel sent you.